about the time if we are exceeding, or just let us know probably a few minutes before it's winding up. Just feel free to tell us so that we don't take away the time from a Q&A session. I guess that's quite important as well, right? So we might get chatty and extend into that. So take care of that, right? So we'll start off. Firstly, since all of us, in fact, most of us have got strong exposure to supply chain planning systems. So one of the risks which we have that we'll go much deeper into planning. And so probably we can, because intelligent supply chain might involve a lot more newer technologies besides that. So we'll probably take an opportunity to see what it means. So I think we'll start with Rohit here. And in your views, when you hear the terms intelligent supply chains, what are the various technologies which you come to your mind? It could be blockchain, IoT, and other things which can attack it.
Yes. Well, let me just give a brief premise in terms of what I do. So I think I spend more than 50% of my work days in a year talking to customers on their business problems, and more so on the supply chain side. Now, I think that actually puts me in a particular context, and I just wanted to bring that context out as well here when we talk about intelligent supply chain. Now, when I talk to many of my customers, and primarily these are CPG giants, semiconductor giants, and all such companies. In a typical supply chain, we do a lot of core planning. It could be demand planning, supply planning, MRP, DRP, and so on. And then, so that's a plan on a sheet of paper. Now what we see at the end is the actual. Now there's a big difference between plan and actual. In between those is a very sweet spot, which I call, and that's the practical plan. A plan that can be executed, a plan that can be made more reliable, a plan that will help me translate into a real actual as well. Now, talking about intelligent supply chain, anything and everything that can be done in order to achieve that practical plan for execution, in order to bring down the anxiety, the nervousness in the system, in relation to, let's say, a stuck working capital, in relation to, let us say, a bad customer service, is what I call intelligent supply chain. I think that's how I see as intelligent supply chain. Now, talking about what is a practical plan, and in different areas of supply chain, this actually means different things. Now, if I look at a demand plan, or demand planning for an example, and let's take the example of a CPG good company, where promotions plays an important role. Your baseline demand, okay, and any forecast that you generate, for example, it's got multiple components to it, and maybe Ravi and Naveen can speak a lot more in detail on that. But one of the components is a baseline demand, then you've got a seasonal demand on top of it, then you've got a promotional demand to build on top of it to arrive at a total demand. Now the trickier part is, how do I really arrive at a more accurate promotion plan? In most of the cases, when we talk with the marketing, the salespeople, the number is a gut feeling. Even now in today's date, in a lot more companies that I talk to, with a lot more customers that I talk to, it's still a gut number talk. They say, okay, you give a depth of deal of 20% and your promotions can be spiked with a lift factor of 8%, as an example. So there is a lot of art still involved in it, and a lot of exact science still needs to be built. I think that is where the intelligent supply chain supported by technology comes into picture. How do I really arrive at a promotion plan which is more realistic in nature, which will help me achieve that high level of forecast accuracy, which will in turn help me reduce an average inventory level or an inventory stock level that I need to maintain, and so on and so forth. I think I can talk on and on, but just in the interest of time, I think that is one area. The other area where intelligent supply, and this is where the ML and AIs of the world come into picture, like building a random forest model, creating a non-linear mapping, and then arriving at the best possible or applicable lift factors to arrive at a promotional plan, or the effect of cannibalization of a promotion on a competing product within your same company or across the companies, etc. Now, the other part is also about how intelligent can I be in designing my supply chain system to make sure that the data flow is very fast and swift. At the end of the day, the whole objective of intelligent supply chain is to drive meaningful decisions, which will help me achieve that practical plan. And the quickness, the swiftness of data flow in between different entities or areas within supply chain is also, and any technology that assists us in the current state, maybe I mean, we can talk, I need to give opportunity to others as well. But so this is the third, so this is the second part. The third part, in a very brief context, is how responsive the ecosystem of the supply chain is towards changing circumstance of your environment, depending on the swift data flow that's happening. What is the meaningful insights coming out from that? So I think these are the three aspects I see at a very broad level on the intelligent supply chain. I hope the context at which I'm trying to set is right, and maybe you can just intervene.
I think, thanks that, I think it's about being more responsive to changes.
Hello, I'm audible now? Yeah, okay. So I think the question was what technologies come into our mind when we think of intelligent supply chains, right? So based on my experience, what I've seen with multiple clients in all the areas of supply chain, computer vision is one thing. IoT, of course, yes. Your cloud computing. Then you have, AI, ML, RPA, right? These are quite technologies which are changing the game for intelligent supply chain now. And a lot of other companies are building their products, combining these multiple technologies together and providing solutions to the customers. Okay, so that's what is happening right now. And what I've seen is it's very important to understand not only what technology brings on the table, but how to utilize that technology for your organization. You should not just run after the buzzword. If everybody is running after AI/ML, I know that all CIOs had that target that they have to go digital. And they called in all consulting companies in and out to tell them what could be use cases for using AI/ML, how to go digital and all that, right? Without even understanding that you don't need to necessarily fit in these technologies into simple use cases. Yeah? And that's what a lot of companies did. They brought in consultants wanted a lot of business from them. They introduced AI/ML, they said, even for this simple use case, you can use AI/ML, right? And it never went beyond proof of concept. It never went beyond that, right? It failed after that, right? I have seen multiple such instances, and a lot of clients coming back to us saying, yeah, you were right that we should not implement AI/ML for this case, and let's now see how we can solve the problem. Focus has to be on solving the problem, not really deciding on what technology will solve the problem. Right? I think that's what I would like to say.
I think, Miksa, what I think you should start with the business case or business problem rather than force-fitting technologies in order to be in with the times.
Absolutely, yes, that's what my point.
I think we have two friends from the manufacturing firm. So do you face these kind of things where there are pressures to force-fit a technology to showcase to people versus solving genuine business problems with the use of technology?
Yeah, so I will address the logistics part into three: inbound, in-process, and outbound. As a consumer of supply chain, from a plant or a manufacturing perspective, the in-process, technologies like RFID, low energy Bluetooth, IoT, ERP, drone, pick-to-light, manufacturing execution systems, these all are very commonly, in a mass way it is deployed. And when we want to go for new digital platforms or new deployment of technologies, we have very conservative approach. So just because somebody else have done, or the CIA want to do, or chief digital officer want to do, it is not taken. The user acceptance is the prime amount. Return on investment drives the overall, gamut of decision making.
Yeah, maybe just add a bit of context to this whole. My favorite three innovations within supply chain. So I'll start with that. So the first one is the T model. So nearly a century back, what it changed was just about the process. It didn't bring about anything very new and fancy in terms of technology. Instead of a workstation-based manufacturing, it changed into a workflow where actually product itself moved rather on a conveyor, and then people I'll just maybe correlate to what Dr. Varun was also saying in terms of how does it impact the laborers, workers as well. So the efficiency increased multiple times, not in percentages, it increased multiple times, the whole productivity thing. Second one, I have some logistics experience as well. So the containers, ISO containers, wherein it was standardized what would be the shape and size of the container, 40 feet, 20 feet, and then imagine the type of efficiency it brought in terms of movement that can be done on a particular ship. And with today's supply chain being global, just imagine if the containers were of all different sizes and somebody had to stack it up, how difficult it would be. Again, nothing like a big technology, just a bit of improvement in terms of how do we do the work. Third one is about how do we identify the different products wherein the barcoding system itself can, and that can be maybe moved up in ladder into a RFID or GPS, whatever. But identification of the product, just imagine any automation to work without the basic startup of identification of a product itself. So these are my three favorite ones. So big message would be, instead of just blindly following up on the technology side, just think about the business problem and how exactly the different ways can be changed in terms of working and conceptualization. Can you just improve the whole efficiency game?
Right.
So that would be a view on that.
Thanks. I think there's the Blue Yonder team as well. So what do you think are the other key technologies which constitute or which will constitute intelligent supply chains, even beyond planning generally?
I would like to bring one very important aspect, that what we call as a segmentation aspect, that how do we look into my products, how do I look into my customer.
Okay.
There are a lot of data and insights are available. So what we are, when we are talking to the customer, or what we are hearing from the customer also, that we don't want to build one supply chain for all, because my customer clusters are changing, my product behavior are changing. Some are high variable, some are perishable, some are long lead time, some are short lead time. Some customers are contractual, some customers are retailers, some customers. So business, so as what is happening is there is no difference in the customer portfolio. Customer portfolio is, or maybe business portfolio is expanding. They're getting into different businesses. It is called a metamorphism, that business are converging together. What is happening? Their products are coming together and their customers are coming together, and you are getting mixed. And that way, it's very important to understand the customer dynamics and the product dynamics you are operating. Don't make single strategy for all. Try to create a different strategy for each and every segment. And that's where you will save a lot of either inventory or meet higher service level, but set up a different rule. And that's where the segmentation become more important. Either use attribute rationalization, more of data analytics, getting a lot of insight, and build the supply chain around it. And that we call is a more intelligent way of solving the problem rather than putting one rule for everyone.
No, I think, thanks a lot. So the disadvantage of being the last speaker is that all the good stuff is already spoken. So so I think we already spoke about what should be done in the supply chain and which are the technologies. So I'll not get into the list of technologies. At Blue Yonder, we have done a lot of good work as far as AI and ML is concerned. The next areas where we are working more are IoT and RPA. So robotics would be one of the solutions for the warehousing solutions. So for WMS side, we are working on that, and IoT is going to be omnipresent. So that again is one area where we are doing a lot of work, a lot of research nowadays.
Thanks. So I think next I want to talk about a fairly interesting area. Is there are many initiatives taken with consulting firms and product firms to digitize supply chain, and fortunately some of them do exceedingly well. In fact, our first initiative with the JDS was with partner I2, which was my first assignment, went off. It's a resounding success at Asian Paints, but some of them don't go off well. I mean, they after some time the companies stop using those products, or there is always a pushback from the people, and the management is not happy that the benefit is coming. So what I want to get your thoughts on is, what are the critical success factors for the intelligent supply chain or supply chain digitization project to succeed? And from the consulting people, what would be your advice to the business or head of supply chain on how to make these initiatives extremely successful?
I'm not too sure the best answer, but I can think of two things there. One, as we heard from Mr. Sriram earlier, that data is oil, correct? And the AI ML, or how we use data, is the refinement. The crude oil cannot be used for anything useful, correct? So for that you need refinement. So I think the way these solutions are implemented at the client side, which a lot of ownership resides on the consultant's shoulders, but a lot of ownership resides on the key stakeholders' shoulders as well. So I have been doing implementations and business process re-engineering kind of assignments throughout my life for 25, 27 years now. Many a times what happens is there is a lot of pressure to go for a particular technology. As somebody was saying earlier, that even if it does not suit your requirement, but AI ML is the thing, correct? IoT is the thing, we have to do something in this, correct? So that is one side of the problem. The second side of problem which I have seen is change management, which is the biggest thing. It has got nothing to do with your business processes, it has got nothing to do with the technology you are using. So change management, when it comes to change management, one of the perceptions, especially because you come from the planner community, which is changing drastically now, used to be earlier that if the entire planning job would be done by JDA systems or by UI systems, what would I do, correct? So one of the change management aspect is to get the buy-in from the people who are going to use the system. If you do not take the buy-in from the people who are going to use the system, it is of no use. So one of the things would be that we need to tell, especially the planner community, that by implementing this solution, we are using machine for things which are repetitive in nature and a lot of data crunching and all of other things, which means you will have a lot of mental bandwidth to solve real problems. So I think that part is something which is missing at quite a few places, that the vision and everything is there at the top or the executive leadership level, but it does not percolate to the actual user.
Maybe I'll just add up a point from a user perspective, and I've seen a couple of failures of digitization projects as well, I would say. One of the major reasons where the failures occur most of the time is in terms of how do you structure your requirement versus the product that you are choosing. And when you say your requirement, it should also mean your business strategy. Say, for example, if you're opting for a technology which does a single run in the next 2 days, and you want to take a business decision at a daily basis. And when I say technology, it's also the configuration. It's not just the technology. It's also the configuration that you have opted for. But because different configurations require different effort, different cost, and while doing the rollout, you haven't thought through what your business strategy is. And if you want to be in a correction mode, I tell you it's very, very different than what a rollout process holds. And I think you would be a better testimony to that. Yeah.
Others? Yeah.
See, anything which is deployed, the lean, I come from a lean background, it has to be very simple. Simple in the sense, it should be straight. We should split the problem into small packets. Then it should be sure. How sure is the application or the solution or the platform is? Then third is how much scalability can bring. So if these three yes get qualified, that's the factor for anything to succeed. Having said that, as a user perspective, I'm also a little bit wary about the pilot syndrome. You do it in some packets. You'll converse with only set of people. So what happens? The whole buy-in from the user doesn't happen. So that is another reason for failure. Last but not the least, when you start a new digitalization initiative, they say, "Hamara kaam badh raha hai." So that we have to somehow make the mindset. There are old veterans who believes in gut feel decisions. So we have to take. They are very strong leaders. They are subject matter experts. They'll be very strong. So we have to make them to. We have to take them along with us. So it's not only about the consultant who are going to give a solution, and it has to be driven by top. All changes, I would say even reforms, cannot happen at department level, functional. It has to be at COO, CEO, CXO level. It should happen. So from my point of view, this all things put together play a role.
In your experiences, please.
Yeah, so I mean, a few thoughts come to my mind, especially when you talked about critical success factors. And if I have to flip it around, what are the failure points, right? So in my practical experience, what I've seen is that when we go and meet up with the supply chain directors or the VP supply chain or the strategy supply chain, they are more or less aligned on why let us say a Blue Yonder has to be implemented, and what is the business case, and what is the benefits that they will end up reaping. But many of the times what I have seen is that they leave the responsibility of convincing to the lower order in their organization to the consultants or to the product companies. So when my consultants go and talk to, let us say, a particular manager in a semiconductor industry as an example, he's not fully bought in, or she is not fully bought in. Now that is where the collaboration starts to break right in the beginning. And if you look at multiple iterative approaches we end up doing in terms of really getting an implementation right, this is one of the issues. The other aspect is that, let us say that everything else is good. The buy-in has happened and everything else is fine. The other aspect where we see as major failure point are the ecosystem within which this technology actually resides. As an example, if you take as the Blue Yonder implementation, right? Now, it has got an input and it's got an output. Now, how well organized the input is, we have seen, and maybe Naveen and Ravi can actually speak a lot more on that a lot of effort, a lot of time is being spent because nobody has diligently looked at their data lakes. Nobody has diligently looked at how their existing or the maturity of their existing data systems is. Now, when we jump into the game, then we realize, oh, this is missing. Oh, no, that is missing. Oh, we need to collect that data. Oh, no, so we don't have access to that data yet. So that server is not accessible to us. So all such things creep up. So this is the second failure point. The third failure point, which I think is extremely, extremely important in my experience, is adoption. How well the end user is adopting the tool you have implemented. In 2019, I did supply chain assessments with my team for about 85 factories in South America in relation to 3 or 4 CPG customers. And you will not believe that most of the planning was still being done in spite of implementation of a product, a standard mature product. In spite of the implementation, in spite of that doing running the batch job, creating the plan every day morning, all such things being done, the percentage adaptation, when we looked at the adaptation percentage, was 7% on an average in the South American continent I was talking about. Everything else was happening in an Excel sheet, nothing else. We asked them, okay, why are you not using this output? They said, no, if I have to use this output, then that master data has to be corrected. And for that master data to be corrected, I need to raise a ticket. Now for that ticket to be raised, I don't have the access, or my manager has the access, and I don't have time to wait. This is the practical problem, where, let's say, technology fails to convince the end user that it is going to be useful to them. Now this, I think these are the 3 points which I feel, in addition to all other points that the other panelists have made. I think that is where, when we as consultants get into the game, we have to be extremely digital, and this is what is the mandate that we actually have in our organization, is that assess the maturity first. Maturity of the organization's IT systems, assess the maturity of their processes, assess the complexity of their processes, then go and bid for something. Otherwise, we are in for a losing game.
Okay. It's very interesting in terms of user adoption, their buy-in, as well as do they have a clean and adequately maintained data set. Your views, Manish? And,
I think they can talk tons and tons of that.
they've suffered a lot.
One of the things what we have seen why some of these initiatives get failed is because we are not assessing the maturity of the organization, of the supply chain. We say level 1 maturity, level 2, level 3. When we go to the customer, they wanted to go to the level 5. But currently, if they are level 2, so they always aspire for level 5, and they want to do it quickly. I want to get there. They tell me what need to take. So maybe it's our problem, it's their problem that we want to position some product, some solution, which is not something they are capable to adopt, because it takes a time to somebody who's level 5. It's a journey they have taken from level 2 to level 5, right? You cannot just take it. So it's very important to understand what maturity it is and try to position the solution which can fit well, use them, and then go to the next level, step by step. So we call it a crawl, walk, run approach. That is what we generally suggest. It depends on the user company to adopt for some of this approach, because they're also under pressure sometimes as they are. But whenever they follow this approach, they always get into. I agree with your point that if we go to the pilot approach, a lot of buying is important. But what is also we are seeing that in all these new technologies, the use cases are also not mature, and technology is also not mature. So if you go to the big bang, there's a problem. So we always think that is always a POC-driven approach is always important to understand whether this AI/ML, what is the going is really going to work, what is the use case we are looking into. Use cases are also not defined. People are always talking to the level 1, level 2. Nobody is talking to the level 3, level 4 detail that how is going to benefit. If you come to that level, sometimes it may be simple solution. You don't need AI/ML to do it, right? It's a simple analytics you can create. So use case has to be defined, co-develop with the business, co-develop with the product team, come up with a solution, test it out, and then roll out to the next one. But again, all the change management adoption is still valid, but these are the 2 things we are finding it's very important.
Manish?
Yeah. I have worked on few projects that have failed, and I have converted them into success. So and the question, very favorite question for me in interviews. So I'm going to reveal answers what I expect from an interview, right? So so there are all these things are important, right? So one is the strategy part, whether you are getting into the right technology, which is as per your maturity level. But once you got into it, you bought the product. One thing is your data. Definitely, data governance is the key for success. But at the same time, if you see how technological landscape has been changing. Earlier, there used to be products, and even JDA was like that earlier, where it will provide certain set of functionalities, right? And then you have to just configure a few parameters there for your business needs, right? But every business is different, right? So earlier, old products in the earlier times, like SAP and all, they were providing very standard functionalities. They would do some customizations, but then very standard, which did not directly fit into all business requirements that different types of businesses had, right? So that was another big point of failure, right, earlier. Now the products are changing, and it's not more, they are not calling it product anymore, it's a platform where you can build your own workflows, you can build your own business logic, and all products are taking that approach now, right? So, but with that, I would tell you, like, you guys are doing your MBA right now. you need to understand the skill set that is required for you. Earlier skill set was very different as a consultant, and the skill set that you need as a consultant now is very different. Earlier skill set you required was how do I configure a product which is already built for you, right? Nowadays, the skill set that you require is how do you build a product? How do you start from ground zero? How do you design a solution to say, I want to see the solution end to end and then design the solution now, because you have to build it ground up, right? That skill set is missing in consultants, because all the consultants which are existing today, even including myself, have come from that background where we have configured all the products which were already there, right? We have not designed the products. Only the product development team had that opportunity to do so. But today, with the platforms coming into play, one important skill set that all the companies need to look for in a consultant who is coming on board is, do they have experience in building the products, right? And I have seen projects failing because of that reason with all the new technologies which are coming in. Because that's one. Second is, earlier there used to be a segregation between project manager, who will only do project management stuff, does not understand technical, does not understand functional. There was a technical guy who does not understand functional, does not understand business and all. You just give him a logic, he will build it for you. And there were functional guys who would understand business logic, they will work with the business on a business logic, but don't understand how technologies work, right? So there were all different guys, right? That was another point of failure, because there are a lot of communication that happens between project manager, technical team, your functional team, client, a lot of communication failures, right? You miss a lot of important points that client would have asked for. So today the skill set that is changing for consultants is to build a skill set in all these three areas equally, right? You should be a good project manager, you should be a good technical person. When I say technical, you should actually know how to write the code, okay? And that's how skill sets are changing nowadays. After doing an MBA, don't expect to be in those strategy rooms with CIOs, CEOs. Sorry, it does not exist, right? You have to write a code. You have to know what are the constraints of those technologies, right? And third very important point, you have to understand the business. Because I worked on one project where this was the problem. They were all technical guys, did not understand the business, and they did not understand what business is saying. Business did not understand what they are saying, and they never reached to a point. First, I worked on a project in the first case happened, right? Third project failure that I have seen was because all the strategies, all the user stories were built in the boardroom, okay? The ground level people who are going to use it on a day-to-day basis were not involved, right? Finally, what happened was something was given to them to use, and it made their life miserable. I have seen planners crying, actually crying with tears in their eyes in a room full of planners. And there was a discussion happening they had already gone live, and they said, we can't work with this software. I don't want to name the software, but it did happen. And it was one of the big softwares, right? One of the largest softwares. And then I thought of like, what's going wrong? What happened? Why this is not working? Then I told those planners, can you give me a chance? Because I working as a project manager there. And I said, give me a chance to work with you, sit with you for the whole day. I just want to see what do you do? How do you plan? That's another thing that consultants don't do. Consultants will come in for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, half a day session, understand your business requirement, and they will design the solution based on that. They don't sit with you to understand how do you do planning or how do you execute your process, right? Show me how do you do that. I will sit with you for 2 days, right? That does not happen, right? So I sat with them for 2-3 days, noting down everything they did on the whole day, each and every activity. And I realized that they were spending time on a lot of activities which were not needed for them to do because they did not believe the system, right? Then how do I build that faith in them? How do you believe the system? So I need to do certain activities to make them believe and prove to them that you don't need to do certain activities, right? And within 2 weeks, They said, yeah, now we are comfortable with the technology, right? So success is sitting with the users, end users, going with them through the whole process. That's another. One more point of failure that I've seen is training. Companies do a lot of training. Lot of training goes on, right? Product training, and mostly it's about product. They will come in, they will talk about this is how you use the product, this is the screen, this is where you do your demand forecasting, this is where you see the review of your plan, this is where you see your financial plan and all that. This is where you can modify the plan and all. What they don't do is forget about the product. Product is just an enabler for you. Let us talk about your process. When you come in, right, what do you want to do? Map their product, map their process, and a lot of projects do that, but that's only on paper. There is something called week in a life of planner. A lot of projects do that. Most of the projects do that, but the way they do it is not effective enough to make the project successful because it's all on paper. You have to actually sit with them and say, this is the process, this is your end-to-end process. In your end-to-end process, this is the process you do it in our technology, right? But this is what you will have to do in Excel because this does not happen in our technology. So you take that output, this is how you use it, this is how you come back to us, right? Talking them through the whole end-to-end process. If you talk only about your product and then you say, I don't care what you do outside that. What are the ins, what are the outs? That's your headache. It doesn't work. That's another point of failure that I've seen. Another thing is, last point is about support. Right? What happens is when project is running, implementation is happening, mostly you would see a lot of brilliant minds implementing it. All good guys will be thrown into it, right? And as soon as it has gone live, the product is live, then comes the support, right? Where you have people with engineering experience, only 2 years or even no experience supporting the product. While the implementation was on, you had people with 12 years of experience, 15 years of experience in implementing technologies multiple times. And nobody tracks user adoption beyond go live. Okay? User adoption is only till go live, and then there is a phase called hypercare. After that, they don't track user adoption at all. That tracking in their list is not happening. Data governance tracking does not happen. It's only till the project is there. So data governance, user adoption, these should be very critical KPIs for the business, even after go live, and should be tracked all through the life cycle of the product till the time they're using it. Right? If that happens and their leadership team is reviewing those, you will never drop the ball. Okay? So I think these were the few points that I have seen.
Yeah. Hey, thanks so much, Manish. I think we have enough material to write an article around it. And combine, I think it's worth publishing a white paper on why projects fail and what can be done. Okay. And another thing I just want to reiterate because it kind of changed my perspective as well. And the times when I was working, which is some time back, was there used to be products like Blue Yonder, any other company might give, and then it would just be configured for the client. But what I hear you saying, the way the current platform is there, it gives you a lot more freedom to customize and play around with the features and build new functionalities. So to that extent, the implementation role can be a lot more creative role than just configuring the software and populating master data and making it run. I think it's something which I had not experienced earlier.
I have recently worked for 2 of the SaaS organizations. So Blue Yonder is a SaaS organization now. I mean, we are selling only the SaaS products. And before this, I was working for another organization which was again a SaaS organization. At Blue Yonder, as I had shown in my slide, we are using Azure as the platform. And on top of that, we are using Blue Yonder platform, which takes care of Blue Yonder specific nuances. I'll not get into technical aspect. The organization where I was working before this place, we were using Salesforce.com as the platform, correct? And we were building things on top of that. So the place where SaaS world is moving is all around microservices. Microservices are nothing but smaller set of programs which take very specific input and do very specific thing. So the way we see this enterprise application world moving, like earlier it was always around a fixed product which you can configure and get things done. Now the way it is moving, there will be industry specific solutions which are pretty much similar to what it used to be earlier, where you can just put the template and do stuff, faster implementations. And rest of the stuff would be all Microsoft services driven, where you assemble multiple microservices and get the desired output. So if you see, going forward, I fully agree with Manish, the job of consultant in coming days is going to be very different from going by the book. It is going to be really creative.
Yeah, I think that's pretty exciting. Makes it very, very interesting for the, in terms of pure job content. It's more than just configuration. I think we have a limited time, so I just want to come to a very important question, especially for the audience. So with the supply chains changing, becoming more intelligent supply chain, people are introducing more complex systems. What kind of skill sets are required for the managers? And so what if suppose there are existing supply chain managers, you have young managers, or people like, our graduates would be joining workforce soon. So what competencies, technical skills and other skill sets they should focus on so that they can fit into such highly digitized supply chains?
I can probably answer. I mean, Manish already answered what he looks for. So, the first basic ingredient which I look for when I interview people would be common sense. If nothing else, you should know how to get things done. Like, I mean, I was in, and sorry for digressing a little. So I was in Ahmedabad last year around Sankranti time frame, correct? The kite flying stuff. And I figured out there were, and Ahmedabad is a place where you see quite a few two-wheelers. You'll see many people going on that Honda Activa or those kind of scooters. And every place I saw, there was a metal thing which was like this, going like this. A metal wire going this and coming down. And it was like till this height of the driver. I noticed it and I was pretty surprised. I mean, I grew up in North, I have been in various cities, I have seen scooters. I never saw that kind of a thing. So then I figured out that kite flying is a rage in Gujarat, especially around that Sankranti time frame. And there used to be quite a few accidents where because of that thread, somebody got stuck in the neck and all those things. And two-wheeler, if you get stuck, you just fall, correct? You get into an accident. And this wire thing was stopping that thread to reach the driver, correct? It was avoiding a lot of accidents. So probably there was no AI ML needed, there was no IoT needed, there was no RFID needed to track that thread, but you can just get this thing done, correct? So other than the common sense aspect, let's come to the other serious aspect. So we spoke about various things. We spoke about AI ML, we spoke about big data, we spoke about RPA, we spoke about IoT. I would say even if you cannot master that part, at least try to understand it. Because, I mean, I was reading it somewhere about that, how much technology enablement you expect from managers. So I really don't know whether people who have mastered that technology would get benefited or not, but I'm sure people who do not have appreciation for technology will not survive. So that's one thing which people need to keep in mind.
Or any order.
Yeah. So from my side, supply chain, I would say, is very simple. It's just art of producing the right thing at right time, storing it correctly, and moving it as and when required in a most efficient way. So not very difficult, I would say, but when I try to complexify in a different language, it's also about integrating lot many things, and ability, somebody. So I've seen when I heard this question about who can be the good supply chain managers, I just visualize whom do I admire. First thing first, which I admire in successful and my managers across the years, their ability to understand the difference. So when we say supply chain, it's not just one component. So it's made up of multiple components. If you start from downstream, right from procurement to manufacturing to warehousing, logistics, closer to customer, planning, it's like a whole bandwidth of thing which together works, and unless that works in synergy, results cannot be seen. So one major aspect is an exposure and understanding of all the different components, and somebody doesn't necessarily to have got an exposure of all of these as direct roles. Even while you are interacting with people who has those sort of skill set or roles, are you learning day by day? Are you developing that capability to correlate all the elements and then bring out the big picture? So that's more on the, I would say, functional side. Second most important thing is the word empathy and compassion. So supply chain is a very high pressure job, I tell you. So if you are working as a supply chain professional and there is a stock out, I tell you, you will not be able to sleep. Your commercial guys, or even by yourself, you will not be able to sleep. So does your manager inspire enough confidence in you to tide through those difficult times? And you will face it daily. You cannot have a perfect world where everything is working very good. In real supply chain, every day would be difficult, and to be a very good supply chain manager, you need to carry empathy and the self-confidence that needs to be inspired in people that you can just get through. Yeah.
One factor for the students who are coming from college is they should be very good in people topic. Why I'm saying is this AI, ML, and algorithms are going to kill a lot of jobs, routine jobs. So obviously there will be resistance to change. So unless you manage that part very carefully, so which the new persons can bring about, that one is a big gap we have in the industry. People are not trained to do that. Second thing, there is nothing called one platform works, the second doesn't work. Edge computing or API doesn't come into play. It is going to evolve continuously. It could be in supply side, it could be demand side, it could be forecasting, it could be from whole sort of thing. So people should be able to move from ability to learn things and move from one packet or one domain or one function to another function. How quickly they learn and adopt will also make a big difference.
I have a slightly different point of view, maybe, or maybe even it's overlapping with all the people who I mentioned. I think what is required, if I have to look at it, is an exploratory mindset and a constant quest for driving business impact. I think when we look at many of the students where we do the campus interviews in many other colleges as well, that mindset, exploratory mindset and driving business impact from the core of their inner self is actually something that is maybe missing. Or maybe it's not immensely highlighted like when we take the interviews. So maybe that's one thing, maybe as a part of their fine-tuning process in this 1 year, maybe you should look at that. The other important piece, which like many have also mentioned, is the technology understanding. And it's not the case now. It's been the case for more than a decade, actually. Only having a functional understanding is going to be of no help. If you understand supply chain, it's not going to be of much help, except for the fact that you will be able to talk on business terms. But in terms of really making that happen on the ground, you need to understand. And tomorrow, you guys will be the managers and CXOs of the world. So you need to have that understanding. Like a general does not need to know how a mountain is climbed, but he needs to understand what are the difficulties, what are the tricks required to climb, and he should have an understanding of who is the right person in his team or her team to give that job or an assignment. So in that way, and you will be able to take that call only if you understand that area well enough, and that's where understanding of technology is very important. I can quote my personal example. About 10 years back, I was in Finland working for a telecom company, and we were driving end-of-life products for them. And after 6 months of consulting business, we actually gave them a recommendation on what needs to be done. He said, I don't have budget for more to implement this recommendation. If you can do it for me, I don't need to explain it to anybody else. I can manage the budget. And I ended up learning a programming language and then ended up delivering the output. So you need to be more like what Sriram was mentioning, you need to be more agile in terms of learning new technologies, getting hook of them. But for that, you need to have a core understanding of what this technology is all about. I think those were a few words.
Yes, so just I think for most of, as again the last speaker, most of the points are covered. But as we started like 20 years ago, people, supply chain itself is a new topic. So supply chain as a subject itself makes a lot of sense. Now coming now in a period of 10 years, 15 years, supply chain is pretty much covered as a subject everywhere. So that is no longer a new topic to cover. And definitely with the SaaS is coming, the new platform culture is coming. I started with the configuration mode and now converting into the studio mode where I have to configure. So what we are looking for is, again, the exploratory mindset where people are ready to change. It's not like I have learned something, I will continue. Every 3 years, I've been with the company with last 20 years, technology and products are changing every 3 years to 5 years, either because of the acquisition or because of the technology landscape. You have to keep changing. So your knowledge, your supply chain concept is still valid, but how you apply your technology to it is still very important, that you have to align to it. So I again emphasize, so what is the benefit of MBA? I would try to give is, you know supply chain, and if you focus more on the technology, you will bridge the gap of techno-functional role very easily. We are getting a lot of data scientists, but they know AI/ML, but they don't know how to apply it to even the forecasting problem, how to do the attribute rationalization. They can write a good code, but they will not be able to solve the business problem. But we have people who can solve the business problem, but they don't understand the data Python kind of thing. They're afraid, oh, I have to write Python, I cannot write. So I think there's no, going forward, techno-functional role is go forward path. There's no functional role in the digital. Everybody in our organization is getting into techno-functional, whatever level they are, because your cloud is changing, your SaaS platform is changing, your open framework is changing. We are bringing all the technology together. You can see what Naveen said last slide. We are opening it the partner to develop it. So I think the techno-functional business application become the focus, and keep on learning is the attitude.
Right. I would say in terms of a skill set as a supply chain manager, consultant I have talked about earlier. I have not worked in the business too long. I have worked only for 3 years. But what I can see while working with them is, first, you should have a boundaryless mind. Don't think of boundaries. That my role is this, therefore I have to only do this. I will not get into this something else. I will not get into that. That is, ye to IT ka kaam hai. This is something that IT would do, or this is something that somebody else has to do. I will not get into understanding of that. Don't have those boundaries in your mind, ever. Even after 10 years, when you have your career, please don't have those boundaries in, right? Second, declutter your mind. Declutter in the sense that, oh, is this what will take my career ahead or will it not, right? You don't know where your career is going to go after 10 years. Nobody knows. Take it from me, nobody knows. After 10 years, where you will go, right? Whatever you are getting right now, utilize that. Make sure that you learn everything where you are in. Don't kill the time when you're in. Just getting frustrated, saying, oh shit, where am I, right? I should look for something and not really devote too much time on learning where you are. Whichever situation you are, it will teach you something which will be useful at some point in time in your life, okay? So never ever think whatever, even if you're uploading Excel sheet to a software and you are doing that for a year, oh shit, that guy is in that company is doing a strategy work, right? Believe me, after 5 years, he will also be frustrated, you will also be frustrated. Okay? Because he will say, yaar, main to strategy kar raha hu, I don't know how to implement things. I want to now see the other side of it, right? And you will see, I want to see how strategy works, right? So both are going to be frustrated, right? So frustration is part of our lives. Okay? How do you convert that into your excitement of your job? Is you should see the end result of what you're doing, how it's impacting somebody, either you or somebody else. If it's impacting somebody in a positive way, that means you are doing a good job. Okay? Good job is not about doing those hi-fi stuff. Okay? I still work on Excel sheets, I still write macros, right? After 20 years of experience. I still upload Excel sheets. Okay, but what you have to see is what impact you are creating with the work that you are doing. That is more important than what exactly you are doing. I think one of the presentation by students showed what my friends think about me and what my relatives think about me. That is very, very true, right? Actually, you do a lot of stuff with, more you do with your hands, more you will learn, greater heights you will reach, right? So that I would say that. And last point, technology, everybody has said about technology, you need to learn how to develop common sense, right? It does not come naturally, right? There are many things where I think that my son, when I talk to my son, it feels to me, this is a very commonsensical thing, right? Why you're not able to understand this? But then when I discuss with him, I understand that it's because he does not have the context of it. He does not have the background understanding on it. To have something as a common sense, you need to have some background of it. You need to have some context of it, right? And you have to develop that habit of understanding those backgrounds and context so that it becomes common sense to you at some point in time, right? So that is something that you should, I think, focus on. Technological skills, yes, you need to learn Python, you need to learn R, you need to see how one of the products work in all areas, whether it's planning. You should know how planning happens in one of the softwares, you should have seen that, whether it's ADA, it's Kinaxis, it's O9, whatever that is. If that can be done through your MBA curriculum, well and good. If not, find an opportunity where you can see how the product works end to end. See how the data flows from ERP system to the planning systems, right? For example, what I've seen as a supply chain managers, what people do is they only say, yeah, I am using this software, I am using the output. When I ask the questions, because I'm interviewing a lot of people nowadays, right, from business side also. So when I ask them, like, do you know from where this data comes in ERP system, what is the significance of that data? They say, no, we don't understand it, right? Only thing we know is this data comes to me and I'm using that data for my purpose, right? No, you have to understand anything that is impacting your work, all inputs that is coming into you, all output that is going out of you. You need to understand whatever reports you are creating as a part of your job, supply chain manager, how that report is being used by the management team, and what decisions do they take on the basis of that, right? So that end-to-end is something that you need to understand as a supply chain manager, right? So that's it. A lot of other things, but
Thanks, Manish. Very useful. I think a couple of things which are more softer skills. So beside the technical part, I think a lot of mindset things which we need to which came through, which I'm sure it will be very useful stuff about having an exploratory mindset, developing common sense. As you mentioned, in order to develop common sense, we have to have a good context. So if you go through, expose yourself to supply chain textbooks and other stuff, you kind of end up developing that context and what are the really important things and what probably are secondary things when you talk about planning, etc. What are really things which really matter. Other very good things. In fact, I was talking to Rohit earlier on how do we recruit, or Mr. Shreyas, how do we recruit these students. So our stress is on not having a particular kind of experience, a particular brand of company you work for, but how well you did whatever you were doing. So the intensity you showed, and there are people, our students who come from maybe a small organization, small consulting. Some people come from they were running their own businesses. But the stress is that we're not getting swayed by the bigness of the designation and the brands, but basically what's the intensity and expertise shown in whatever the person was doing. So I think it vibes very well with what we value. So yeah, thanks so much. I think we have exceeded time a little bit, but we could have gone on and on. Very interesting conversation with a fantastic panel. Thank you so much. Right?
Thank you so much, panelists. We're sure the batch has benefited from the discussion and the insights shared by you. Some of your thoughts have hit really hard. So thank you for coming in today and sharing your decades of experience and combined wisdom with us. We truly value that. We now open the session for questions from the audience. I request the audience to raise their hand and we shall bring the microphone to you. Please keep the questions brief. You may direct your question to a specific panelist or to the entire panel.
Hello, sir. I'm Niranjan Sureka and I'm from the Ops and Supply Chain background. So first of all, thank you for giving us a taste of the ground reality. I have two questions. The first question is for Rohit sir and Naveen sir. Sir, how is the current responsiveness of your clients? What is the current responsiveness of your clients while implementing the intelligent supply chain when it deviates from their traditional way? So this is my first question. And my second question is for Avinav sir. Sir, Michelin being a supplier to OEMs, are there challenges Michelin faces in terms of supply chain upgradations if your customers are not as up to date as yours? So this is my second question. Thank you, sir.
So, I'm not too sure if I got the question right, but I'll just tell my understanding and you can correct me if I'm wrong. So, I think the question was, how does your customers respond when you tell them that the intelligent way of managing supply chain is very different from the way you are doing and that stuff, correct?
Yes, right, sir. That
Okay.
is the.
So, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
So, it goes back to the old philosophy. I don't know how many of you. So, 20 plus years back when I started working on ERPs, I'm talking about late 90s. The only formal qualification available in supply. I'm deviating a little, so you'll need to bear with me for a moment. So the only formal qualification available was CPIM certification. I'm not too sure how many people know about that. So I liked one concept there called order qualifier and order winner. So order qualifiers are the attributes which require you to be in the game, and order winners are the things which basically are differentiators, which sets you apart, correct? So the intelligent supply chain, I would say and I'm just linking it with this time frame, in this time of disruption and uncertainties, before that it was more of the order winner, people who were using that were the winners. Now it has become more of a qualifier. If you are not using it, you will not be there in the game. So Ravi and I are in Mumbai because we are working with a client, and there was a steering committee meeting. I traveled for that this week. These were the two reasons. One was SPJ and another was that. And these are the steel majors, probably the biggest in India. And from the top of their leadership, everybody was there. The kind of response we see nowadays from the clients is phenomenal. So these are the people who picked 50 plus people from their entire supply chain for running this program. So the people who were sitting with us for the design discussions, Ravi is leading that, were the people who were having designations starting from supply chain planner till the AVPs and VPs of supply chain. So that is the kind of response we are getting, and I think, and that's the only thing which is going to assure the success of that program as well. Sorry for a long answer.
Thank you, sir.
I think when we go to the customer saying that, okay, intelligent supply chain, if you take an intelligent supply chain approach and this is the idea for it, and if you're asking what's their response in the current date, I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to about three things: R, C, and M, revenue, cost, and margin. If you have a business impact mindset, and if we are able to show them as a business case that, okay, you do this, and this is going to be the ultimate reduction in cost, because at the end of the day, supply chain more or less is a cost center still. If you are able to tell them or convince them about that business case, then I think the responses in most of the cases are positive. And if I have to give you one example, like very recently about an year back we did, and you come from the ops background, so you will be able to understand that much better. In a typical MRP process, you send your PO to the vendor, and the vendor comes back with order confirmation. You get that date of order confirmation, which you put it in the system. And from there you come to know the ETA of the system, basis which your material constraint plan can be run, right? Now, in many scenarios of our customers, and in this particular customer, we saw that there were about 6 to 7 vendors who were supplying good amount of volume. These were niche players in terms of providing materials, and they were very reluctant to get into the EDI ways of working, which meant that my customer had 19 to 20 planners sitting in Europe, calling these vendors up on a day in and day out basis, getting the order confirmation, and manually punching that date into the planning system. Now, what we did was, as a proposal, we told our customer that you have 19 to 20 people sitting there who are looking and conversing using the emails. Now, why can't we run a text analytics algorithm which will parse the email, drive meaningful interpretations, and then put that information into an Excel sheet which can be easily uploaded into the system. Now, in a span of about 3 to 4 months, we were able to really get that done, and the customer was also quite happy to give us a go-ahead, because the investment was hardly anything compared to the amount of benefits that he would be reaping. So we were able to bring it down from 19 to 20 people to only one person now. So if we are able to show them the business impact with your proposals, the responsiveness is going to be amazing. And with that, we got more business, by the way. So that's also the second part of it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, maybe if I come to your question on the supplier and OEM relationship, especially if they have technological platforms which are not compatible. In real life, it happens. So there are many, in fact, most of the relationship between vendors and suppliers face this problem in non-compatibility. That's the first in terms of technology side. Second, wherein bigger problem comes is at times the trust and transparency as well. So does either player share the complete information that you should be sharing? So it's not just about technology, it's also about the cultural and software aspect. The third thing, in today's world, any information will be true only for some period of time. What you have to learn and adapt in the whole ecosystem will be how to make your supply chain systems as agile to respond to the changing needs. And for OEMs, it becomes even far more difficult, because any miss on supplies has larger linkages. Say, for example, if you miss a supply of a particular component which goes into a very big machine, it might just be a nut or bolt with 10 rupee value, but the machine cannot be completed without that. So that's, in those cases, it's majorly managed through more of a proactive prioritization from the supplier side, wherein you put aside a capacity or you prioritize your different demands. Within the different demands, you prioritize the OEMs. Those are the different ways that you tackle the whole problem. Okay.
Thank you so much for the enlightening discussion. It's for all the panelists. So as our Dean also mentioned that because both the leaders from the client side and the consultant side are sitting over here, while we give suggestions to the companies on improving the supply chain, do we also focus on the people aspect and the sustainability of nature aspect as well, or that gets lost into the revenue minus cost equal to margin calculation?
As I have the mic in hand, maybe I will try to start first. I would say the world is changing on this aspect. So if I just talk about the scenario 5-7 years back, all the questions and answers were directly related to optimization and the cost value of it. Now, especially with the multinational organizations, I would have a very clear view. The first whole discussion starts with the people, planet, and profit mindset, wherein you combine the whole ecosystem rather than just looking after profit. Even if I talk about a couple of examples of bigger transformation project within my organization, the ones which are touching the sustainability and diversity aspect, those are appreciated far more, I would say. And even at the larger company forum, those are the examples which are cited. Maybe just to inspire, and also the impact, the ripple effect goes bigger. So that's how it goes.
So I would agree with the awareness part, which has increased over, I would say, past 5 to 7 years. So earlier it was more around optimization, and now we are talking about the software aspect more often. As you said, that do you give those kind of options which are more people-centric, environment-centric, and those kind of things? And I will I will link it with my experience at Blue Yonder, where we are doing most of the supply chain management. Earlier, I used to work on ERP, where we were doing everything under the sun within the organization, correct? So, from a consultant point of view or a product organization point of view, it is in your control to give the suggestions, but it is in the industry's control to decide whether they want to go ahead with that or not. That is point number one. And point number two is, many a times before you start a project, you are given a problem statement, correct? So in majority of the cases, the client would say that these are my 5 top pain points and I want you to address it. So your focus would always be to address those 5 pain points, and many a times these good aspects are not appearing in that list. So that becomes a challenging. You can have a sidebar conversation on these topics, but because you were supposed to solve 5 problems, if it is not one of those, you will not be able to solve it. Or you will not be able to propose a solution.
So one of the point wanted to bring here is it depends on the type of industry you are operating, right? So from the planet point of view, so something like maybe the steel or maybe the asset which is quite of emissions are there. They are very much focused on looking into the whole planet direction. But there are companies we are still working on. They are working on the optimization, cost benefit, revenue benefit. That is still the focus. So I would say that depending on the nature of the companies, where they are impacting more, some are forced to do it because that's a government regulation to ensure some of the green emissions, CO2 emissions they have to control, and some of the solutions take care of it, not completely, but that is also where the focus. But depending on the type of industry that they are focusing on, some are there, but some are still focusing on the revenue margin kind of flow. So the culture is coming, but not fully adopted across.
Yeah, the hard fact is industry is profit driven. Let us face the fact. So there are forces which drives industries. You might have studied in management book how customers are demanding, how the union or the human resources scarcity or the demand from union is there. So that determines one factor. Then all government regulations are evolving. For example, BS4 to BS6, Germany took 8.5 years. Japan took 13 years. India took 3.5 years. Somewhere government plays a role. People orientation, safety. One fatal incidents can make the factory close. Because the society in and around the factories can exert pressure on the industry to be more safety conscious. If you pollute, if you are not water positive, if you are not going to become carbon neutral, you cannot issue green bond. So there are compulsions which industry, I would say it's not a motivation, it's a compulsion, I would say. It's a negative word, but that's hard reality. So that the entire market drives the industry, whether they are people friendly or environment friendly. But everybody looks at bottom line, which is profit.
Yeah, I had 2 points there. Maybe I'll give a few examples as well on how sustainability is trending currently. We do see a lot of interests coming from many of the manufacturing companies to invest a lot more on sustainability. To give you a few, and a few of these are driven by the government regulations, and a few of these are, of course, proactive in nature. As an example, one of the biggest pallet manufacturing company, you know what's a pallet, right? The one that you keep at the top. So the biggest pallet manufacturing company is obliged to actually be carbon positive, not even neutral. As per the regulation, it's supposed to be carbon positive, and they're investing huge in that because in such companies, sustainability is taking a center stage. There are a few other companies where a lot of proactively the sustainability topic is being driven, but of course that is not yet on the center stage. I think that is so. Those are a few examples. But my personal belief is that if sustainability has to be an important topic, I think more of us have to decide as end consumers. More of us have to decide as end participators to really push this campaign forward. As an example, if I and more of the people in this room decide that I'll go and buy a shampoo from a company which is carbon neutral, automatically you will see that being carbon neutral becomes the center stage for that organization. I think a lot of things are to be done at our end while the government is doing its best in the current environment. That's what is my thought process.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, audience, for the enthusiastic participation. On behalf of the SPJMR family, we extend our heartfelt thanks to all the participants for taking time to come to our campus and interacting with all the students. I request Professor Nilendra sir to kindly present the token of appreciation to all our panelists.
Putting together an event of this nature is no easy task. It takes months of planning, preparation, and coordination. We would like to appreciate the guidance and support of our Dean, Dr. Varun Nagaraj, and faculty members, Professor Nilendra Singh Pawar, Chairperson PGPM, Dr. Sridevi, Associate Program Head PGPM, Professor Debmalya Chatterjee, Area Head Operations and Supply Chain Management and Quantitative Methods Group, Mr. Bhishma Chugani, Head Career Services, Ms. Almaz Sheikh and Ms. Aditi Gadia for the relentless support in pulling this together.
We get this done with the active participation of all the students of PGPM. So big thank you to all of you. Student-led committees are what drive all activities and events at SPJMR. Committees help our participants understand how to influence without power, a critical component of teamwork and management. Team Samavesh was composed of members from different committees. Core team members of Operation Conclave, Mr. Ankur Vats, Shiromani Pathak, Shantanu Sharma, IICOM members Nidhi and Suvek. Members from Marketing and Alumni Relationship Committee, Revant, Prakhar, Richa, Mukundhan, Ronak, and Utsav. Along with the volunteers, Sumit, Gauranga, Amir, Kritika, Arnab, Anurag, Varun, Shashank, Amlan, Nilab, and Prithwijit. A big round of applause for all of them.
Thank you, everyone. We close the Operations and Supply Chain Conclave here and invite the panelists, faculty members, and presenters for a photo session on the stage. This is Ishan.
And I'm Ankita.
Signing off. Thank you.